Dzień dobry Państwu, nazywam się Tomek Domagały, jestem krytykiem teatralnym i mam wielką przyjemność i zaszczyt zaprosić Państwa na kolejne spotkanie w ramach Festiwalu Szekspirowskiego w Gdańsku, bo Festiwal Szekspirowski w Gdańsku to nie tylko spektakle, nie tylko spotkania z wybitnymi artystami po spektaklach, nie tylko wydarzenia towarzyszące, ale także takie intymne wywiady prosto z backstage'u dla Państwa i właśnie taki wywiad, taką rozmowę za chwilę przeprowadzimy z jedną z największych gwiazd Teatru Szekspirowskiego, ale także tej edycji festiwalu i jeszcze kilku innych, bo nasz gość gościł już w Polsce. Jest ze mną reżyser spektaklu Hamlet z Teatru Narodowego w Craiovej tym razem, ale też założyciel kompanii Jowl, drugiego po Royal Shakespeare Company, najsłynniejszego szekspirowskiego teatru świata. Declanem Donnellanem. Hello.
Hello.
Zacznijmy od Hamleta. Zrobił go Pan dopiero 3 razy. W 1991 roku w Jowl, potem w 2015 roku w Teatrze Ballet i teraz w Rumunii. Czy musi się coś stać szczególnego, żeby się Pan zabierał za Hamleta, tak jak to ma w swoim zwyczaju wielu reżyserów?
Yes. The most important thing for me is the actors, and I need to have a bond with the actors before I decide on the play that I will do. So Nick, my partner, and we don't decide on a play we want to do and then find actors to be in it. We like to know a group of actors and make the play for them. So we did Oedipus here, and we met Vlad and a lot of the actors, and we thought they would be very good. So it's the important thing for us is the actor, that the whole thing is built around the acting.
A czy w takim razie też z tej strony społecznej też musi się coś takiego zdarzyć, że ten Hamlet musi się wpasować w rzeczywistość?
No, in a way and yes. Oscar Wilde said that nature always follows art. He was being funny. But it's very interesting that whenever we choose to do a play of Shakespeare's because of the actors, suddenly it seems to be completely important to the political situation, which is quite strange. But it's so interesting how, from my perspective, it's as if the play changes according to the time you're in. It's quite strange.
To takie pytanie 1A. Co zatem stało za tym, że wybrałeś Hamleta akurat w Rumunii, w Craiovej? Czy to był tylko zespół aktorski, tak jak mówisz, aktorstwo?
No, it was mostly the actors. But I mean, it's always good to do Hamlet because it's always going to be relevant because it's so universal. And as it was when we did it at Bolshoi and when we did it in England too, all those years ago. But it always means something different. They're like diamonds, you know, it's a different colour. Whichever way you look at it, it's a different colour. That's very Shakespeare, of course. But I mean, it's very interesting.
Kim dzisiaj jest dla Pana ta postać Hamleta? Czy jej obraz zmieniał się w Pana wyobraźni przez te wszystkie lata?
I think so, yes. I think human beings, I think we're a strange species. And I think we're the only species that's born with a doubt as to whether or not we exist. And that from the moment the baby's born, it screams itself into presence with its mother. And Hamlet's all about that question of existence. The problem is that existentialism, are very boring words and people fall asleep immediately. But Hamlet is about this very frightening topic that it's the thing we can't bear most. We think we're frightened of death more than anything else, but I don't think that's true. I think the thing we're more frightened of is being temporary. It's just so insulting that we're temporary. And we would rather make gothic extremities and be frightened of death in a horror film way. We'd rather have that because actually that's a distraction and it's a defense against coming to terms with the fact that we're all temporary, and it's really annoying. And the problem is that we don't like being temporary.
Gdybym miał Pana zapytać o to, czy Hamlet to jest postać, która wyłania się ze świata, który go otacza z dworu elsynorskiego, czy raczej odwrotnie, to Hamlet przez to, w kogo się przeradza kolejne pokolenie, tworzy ten świat wokół również?
Well, that's a very good question. And that is our problem. Because sometimes we say about people, oh, he's very egocentric, he's the center of his own universe. But the problem is, we are, because we all invent the world that we live in. And somehow yet we've got to realize that we're not the only people in the world. And it's a problem for a human being, because the only world we can make up is one that is in our heads. And so we do invent the world, and we are unfortunately at the center of that world. And then we have to discover that actually that's not a very good way to live.
W tym rumuńskim przedstawieniu też szuka pan takiej odpowiedzi, czy raczej zostawia to ze znakiem zapytania na końcu?
It depends what you mean by interpretation. I think the big questions that come up in Hamlet is how we relate to being temporary, and all the crazy things that we do to stop being temporary. And the problem with our species is that the one thing we know for sure, which is that we're temporary, is the one thing we won't accept. And so that's why humans have a big problem.
Przejdźmy do jakby pana stylu teatru. Inscenizacje pańskie generalnie cechuje daleko posunięty ascetyzm. Z czego wynika taki wybór teatralnego języka?
Well, again, it comes from the actors. We start with an experimental period with the actors. We like, if possible, to take them away from the city where they live, and we take them to some place in the country, and where we can grill sausages for ourselves in the evening, and just be alone, and hopefully very bad internet connection. That's good, so that we're there. And in a week or 10 days, it's amazing how much work we do. And it's important that that's not part of the rehearsal period, that's before the rehearsal period. And Nick, the designer, is with me. We do everything together. And we ask the actors to make propositions for various situations, not necessarily in the play. Sometimes there are things before the play begins. And we want to use the actor's imagination to furnish us the experience. And then we choose those things. That's sort of how we work.
Niezwykle istotny jest również dla pana tekst sztuki. Dobrze to widać zwłaszcza w przypadku Szekspira. Czy to efekt zanurzenia się w angielskiej tradycji teatralnej, zakochanej w autorze i w aktorze, czy może czegoś innego?
Those very big things to answer. I think art is there to rescue us from words, because words are a problem. Words don't do what they say they do. It's like we're all, whatever's in my head, when I put it into words, it comes out as Google Translate, because the words don't measure up to our experience of the world and of our love for each other, or our hatred for each other. Words don't work very well. And great poets, great writers, all know that words don't work well, so that they write using that, so that you can, and that's what's very important to me. And the text is very important to me, but you shouldn't necessarily believe anything anyone says. They're not necessarily lying. What they're saying is an approximation to what's in their minds. It's only a clue, but there's something else going on.
Peter Brook powiedział kiedyś, że na warsztatach teatralnych do młodzieży jako puentę swojej pracy powiedział: no dobrze, wierzycie temu Prospero, ale co, jeśli on w każdym słowie kłamie? Czy pan też czasami zakłada, że postacie szekspirowskie kłamią?
Oh, yes, all the time. Shakespeare understands that we are all unreliable narrators. That's absolutely true. We have a word in English, I don't know if it translates into Polish, which is bullshit. Yeah. Which is, bullshit isn't just shit. It's bullshit. It's when we are trying to convince somebody of something and there's no real substance to it. Shakespeare's brilliant at using that, and so many of his characters speak like that. And if you're very naive, you believe the surface of the words. But some of the times people are honestly trying to express the truth, as it were, whatever that is. Some of the times they are covering up. much of the time they are deceiving themselves. So, oh God, yes. No, it's absolutely fatal to believe what people say like that.
Powiedział Pan już, że w teatrze najważniejszy jest dla Pana aktor. Czy mógłby Pan trochę opowiedzieć, w jakim sensie?
For me, the central moment of theatre, the really moving moment, is best summed up by a cave painting of a stick man with a spear, and he's pointing that spear up at a big mammoth, and you can see these in different forms in different caves all over the world. And so what happens is that you see the man seeing the mammoth, and you see the mammoth seeing the man. And that's like the predicament that the man sees. And for me, that's what's so important in acting and in the theatre, that you don't see the actor, you see what the actor sees. You are witnessing a witnessing. That for me is incredibly important. And yeah, that's why, and I love, and that's difficult to do.
Niezwykle istotne jest też to, że żyjemy w epoce reżyserów w typie Prospera, którzy władają całą przestrzenią teatralną. Jak Pan w takiej sytuacji widzi swoją rolę w teatrze?
Well, I see my role in theatre like in life. We don't have control, A, and B, we don't like it. So, I mean, every single one of us on the surface of this planet, we're trying to control things, to control the temperature, to my next meal, to am I going to be unemployed? Do I have somewhere to live? Does this person love me? We're always trying to control and failing to control. And that's very much what our life is like. And it's very difficult to make any advance in the theatre, in life probably, until we accept that we are out of control. So it's not for me to, I don't see myself as sort of controlling everything that happens on the stage. I mean, normally if the actors come up with something spontaneous that's alive, they can are very, very happy to use that. And we go back to our plays because I need to see them because they distort. And sometimes, hopefully, it'll be slightly different from when we last saw it. And we'll say, that's good, but that's not so good. So you're guiding it in a direction, but you have to respect the fact that it's out of control. Just as we have to respect the fact that we're out of control of each other. We have to accept that, celebrate that. It means we're not alone.
Wróćmy na chwilę do Hamleta, ale trochę z innej perspektywy. W jaki sposób sytuuje Pan Hamleta na mapie szekspirowskich arcydzieł? I czy w ogóle taką mapę szekspirowskich arcydzieł Pan posiada?
I think it's about 1599, Elizabeth still on the throne. It's the first of his tragedies, and he was still learning a lot. And it was completely brilliant, but it's not, he goes somewhere even further when he does Macbeth and Lear and so on. Hamlet is his first moment of trying to write a big tragic play, really. I don't regard Romeo and Juliet as being a tragedy. That's something else. But yes, I think the problem with Hamlet, not the problem is I think it's a very clever play. And cleverness isn't very good. Cleverness is quite dangerous. And it was a huge success, Hamlet. And his next play was Troilus and Cressida. And somebody once said that, that Hamlet is a play about a sick person, and Troilus and Cressida is the play that sick person wrote, which I think is very, very interesting. I don't think it's as mature as Lear and Macbeth and Othello, but it's still absolutely wonderful. And yeah.
A czy któraś z tych sztuk Szekspira jest Pana ulubioną, albo ma Pan jakieś takie, nie wiem, woli Pan robić właśnie tragedie, wielkie sztuki Szekspira, albo na przykład te właśnie zapomniane, czy Cymbelina, czy właśnie Troilusa i Kresydę? Jak to wygląda też z Pana perspektywy?
Well, my favorite Shakespeare play? Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. When I teach, I normally use Macbeth. And one of the reasons I use Macbeth is that if the actors are acting well, it's always new. I always see something new in Macbeth, so I never get bored with Macbeth. Hamlet's is rather more difficult, and Othello is a wonderful play too. But I also love the old plays of Shakespeare. I've done them over and over again. You know, Pericles, Cymbeline, The Tempest, I'll probably end up doing them again because after the tragedies, he starts to write these extraordinary plays like The Winter's Tale that start like tragedies and then they end up not being tragedies. And there's a hope of redemption. One of the things I like about Shakespeare is that he's never nihilistic. King Lear seems to be nihilistic sometimes, but actually there is still some hope there. There's still some redemption somewhere in the play. And by the end of his life, he's writing plays saying that life is awful, but it's also, life's not just shit, life is beautiful as well. So there is a hope for redemption. I think that's there always in Shakespeare. There's always a love in Shakespeare, but never any sentimentality. He hates sentimentality. He writes about sentimentality. Yeah.
Jesteśmy w trakcie wielkiej rewolucji związanej z płciowością człowieka, a ja mam takie wrażenie, że Szekspir nam wszystko to już kiedyś napisał. Czy pan również ma taką refleksję?
Very much so. And I think it connects to a very big issue that I'm writing about at the moment, which is that human beings are actors. And that's what's extraordinary about being an actor. And that whatever we are, we have to perform it. Now, unfortunately, people like Plato and so on, in some of his work, implies that acting and theatre are sort of bad things because they're not true. But we have to act our parts well. So I act as a theatre director. I act sometimes as a lover, sometimes as a friend, sometimes we act different things and we have to act them very well. Now, in terms of gender identity, you're right, Shakespeare's quite obsessed with that, but it's like your sex is what you are born with, XX or XY chromosomes, or it's more complicated than that, but your gender is your performance. And so many of Shakespeare's plays are about, they're a critique of, well, not a critique, but Shakespeare would never do a critique, but it's a world in which he understands that gender is performed. So Lady Macbeth's always telling Macbeth, you know, how he's got to be a man and she's afraid that she's a woman, and it goes through all of the plays. In the early comedies, the women dress up as men, but all the way through there's an understanding that gender is a performance. You're not born with gender, but you're born with the sex you are.
W Polsce mamy bardzo szeroko zakrojoną dyskusję na temat reprezentacji w teatrze, czyli kto kogo może grać. U Szekspira jest to naturalne, bo te postaci grają też różne inne postaci wewnątrz sztuk. Co pan myśli o tej reprezentacji? Czy rzeczywiście mamy taką sytuację, że tylko pewne osoby mogą grać pewne osoby w sztuce?
The answer to your question is yes, it is very important. Secondly, I don't know the answer. I can only go on my personal taste, but I have seen a white man playing Othello with black makeup and I hated it. And I've had 3 black Othellos. I would never have a white actor playing Othello, so for example. But changing the gender of a character doesn't worry me so much. It depends. It depends on the specific circumstances. So, yeah, there are certain things that do worry me about. But I think, on the whole, an actor ought to be able to act anything. Really, it worries me if we approach an era of censorship. Whereas,
Rozmawialiśmy o Szekspirze, ale w pana repertuarze jest też trochę dramaturgii elżbietańskiej. Znalazłem Racina, Czechowa, Dickensa, Puszkina, a więc klasyka generalnie. Ale też ma pan kilku autorów współczesnych, Coward, Erdmann, Kushner. Co pana skłania do wyjścia poza teksty klasyczne? Co musi mieć tekst współczesny, żeby się nim pan zainteresował?
It's a very good question. It has to be a good play. because I have to live with it for a long time. And if a play is very good, it will continually surprise me. And it's very important that I honour the mystery of a play. If you can explain it, it isn't a work of art. And so you can't explain a work of art. But there'll always be something human and mysterious at the heart of a play. For me, that's the thing that stops me getting bored. It's like to live with someone, to love somebody. You have to respect their mystery. I always get very upset when I hear parents sometimes saying, I know my child. I know my child. And it's quite worrying that, because I don't think we do know who we are particularly. And I think it's very dangerous to say, I know that person, even if it's your child or your parent. That there has to be we have to respect the mystery. I think there's no love without mystery. Love is not mechanical. And there are things like that I find very important.
Ostatnia kwestia. Dużo pracował pan w Rosji. Czy napaść Rosji na Ukrainę pana zaskoczyła?
Yes, and devastated. And whole half of our lives has been removed because we can't go to Russia, we can't see our Russian actors. And it's just incredibly sad, the whole situation. And it's been a complete revolution in our lives. But it has, sometimes you can rescue something from a disaster. So I wouldn't have been able to work in Romania or Bulgaria or anywhere else, because people would often ask me, Nick, to work, and I say, no, we have to go back to Moscow, we have to go back, because we were always working in Russia with these actors whom we love. And now I can't. So now we started working in different places, and we enjoy it. But I keep in regular contact with my friends in Russia.
Przyglądał się tam pan też tej sytuacji jakby społeczeństwa rosyjskiego, bo w jakimś stopniu robił pan spektakle dla tych ludzi, którzy tam po prostu żyli i mieszkali. Czy nie zauważył pan wtedy, że to społeczeństwo coraz bardziej jakby stacza się w jakieś takie objęcia nacjonalizmu czy nawet faszyzmu?
Well, I have to say, I noticed that all over the world, never mind Russia. And there seems to be a rising tide of nationalism. In my own country, voted Brexit for completely stupid reasons. And what's interesting is people often say, oh, nobody ever voted to make themselves poorer. It's not about ideology. George Bush Sr. is supposed to have said it's the economy, stupid, as if it all comes down to follow the money. I don't think it does at all. I think ideology really matters to people, and that is a profound problem in nationalism. And Václav Havel brilliantly wrote nearly 30 years ago that the whole Soviet system would be undermined not because people wanted American consumer goods. It wasn't going to be about money. It was going to be about rising nationalism, that rising nationalism would make the Warsaw Pact, for example, here, break away. And so it's, nationalism is very explosive. And I'm Irish, and Ireland has got tremendous nationalism in it. And I remember my uncle in Dublin taking me to Glasnevin cemetery, where many of the Irish patriots are buried. And I said, these are Republican graves, are they, Jerry? Yes, to my uncle. He said, they're not Republican, they're nationalists. I always remember him, and I was very young, and I just remember this thing about nationalism from him. And now I learn about it even more. But I think it's always there everywhere, actually. Even in Poland, I think.
Teatr w Rosji, przynajmniej ten, który ja widziałem trochę, kontestował rzeczywistość i bił na alarm od pewnego momentu. No oczywiście nie cały, ale duża część elit teatralnych czy artystycznych zauważała procesy gnicia rosyjskiego społeczeństwa. No ale po tym, co się stało i co widzimy, okazuje się, że teatr nic nie mógł, że tak naprawdę cała ta sytuacja jest dowodem na to, że teatr nic nie może. Czy to rzeczywiście oznacza, że teatr nic nie może w takiej sytuacji?
Look, I think it's quite simple, but in one way, which is it's great to make the world a better place. It's great if we can use our work as artists to make the world a better place. But, and it's a big but, if we start to do that, we must be very careful that we look down at our shoes and we make sure that we haven't become superior to other people. Because all over the world, the left is often failing, often because it comes across as being superior. You become superior to other people. So the one thing about Trump is that he never seems superior. He just never comes across as being a cosmopolitan, intellectual, middle-class person at all. And it's, no, I certainly don't think that it's like saying, it's not that art has a mission to make the world a better place. Art is what we do naturally. We need it. It's because it brings us together and it helps us articulate the profound experiences that can make us lonely. That's the important thing about art. But, and yes, I mean, I hope any good art will actually make the world a better place, but it's not about telling us how to vote. You know, it's not about the democratic process. It can be, but you need to be very careful because one needs to be careful because as soon as you seem superior, as soon as you seem to preach, you can really put people off you. Nobody likes to be spoken down to. You understand? Nobody likes to be patronized.
Czyli rozumiem, że na tym polega polityczność teatru.
I think the political nature of theatre, I think that theatre is deeply political, but insofar as the fact that I'm an animal playing a part, and now if I'm an actor, I'm playing a part as a person, but when I act, I'm going to play another part as another person. I think the understanding that we can be different things and that there are different points of view is profoundly political, and that people see the world from different shoes. And it's really important. And we find that so hard to imagine that other people are inventing another world. It's very, very hard to imagine. So, yes.
Ostatnie takie pytanie, epilog chciałem Ci zadać, już powracając do Hamleta i do zespołu teatru w Craiovej. Co takiego fantastycznego znalazłeś na styku swojej irlandzkiej natury i rumuńskiej, że tak powiem, rumuńskiej charyzmy, rumuńskiego ducha, z którym przyszło Ci się zmierzyć? Nawet mi się jakoś tak skojarzyło, że trochę byłeś jak Hamlet. Pojechałeś do Craiovej i spotkałeś swoją trupę aktorów, którą odpowiednio musiałeś poinstruować.
Oh, it's the simplest thing in the world. It's not, you know, to make it sound like an intellectual effort. No, it's just actually having feelings for people, and you work with that. Yes, and something wonderful happened in Craiovej, and it was wonderful. Something wonderful also happened previously in Moscow with actors, and then at the Bolshoi with dancers, and it was just wonderful to be with them. I think that's what really matters to me in the theatre, is just being with people is really, really important. And if when I'm with people, I can make something with those people, then that's fantastic. And if that thing that we make is something that shares things with other people, that's even more fantastic. And if that can go to different countries, that's wonderful because we celebrate what we have in common. And no, they're just a very particular bunch of people in Craiova, and I love them very much, and I'm very grateful to them.
Thank you very much, Declan, for your kindness.
No, thank you.
Dziękujemy Państwu serdecznie. To już koniec naszej rozmowy. Zapraszam jeszcze na jedną rozmowę z Grzegorzem Jarzyną za chwilę. A Państwu bardzo serdecznie dziękuję za uwagę i również mojemu gościowi. Do widzenia.